introduce you to a brand new program, and I want to thank Toloka Studios and Production for bringing this to, allowing us to do this. What we're doing today is a premiere of business and finance in Ukraine. I'd like to introduce you to Ben. He is my business partner. His name is Ben Miller. My name is Mike Wilson. We're going to be talking about Andesite Blue, as you can see in the bottom corner of your screen, and also a little bit why we're in Ukraine, about Ukraine, and just the value and importance and the things that we see that's very good, that we appreciate. So right now, Ben and I are going to kind of discuss Andesite Blue and what does Andesite Blue mean. We actually incorporated in August, late August of 2020. And Ben and I got together during the pandemic, and we basically formulated this concept and the idea of Andesite Blue and what it means. If you go to the website, of course, it'll give you more details, but I'd like to just give you the real simple, basic form. Why Ukraine, why business, and why finance? One of the things is that both of us have a deep background in business, and Ben has a deep background in finance as well. So it just made sense when we got here into Ukraine. I've lived here for 3 years. Ben has been here for over 4 years, going on 5. And we begin, when you live here as Western born in a Western culture, you begin to see things very clearly of opportunities and just business, and finance, investments. There's just so much going on in Ukraine right now that as an emerging market that really makes it an ideal place. But that's not why I came here originally, and that's not why Ben came here originally. So what I'd like to do right now is just kind of introduce you to Ben and tell us a little bit about you, Ben, and what brought you to Ukraine.
Sure, absolutely. So I grew up in Texas in the United States, and after the university, I studied economics and Russian studies. I graduated from the University of Colorado at Boulder. Then I lived in Russia actually for a few years. I lived in Russia for 3 years where I was studying the Russian language and just also teaching English. At that time I was a college student and I also was teaching English. And then my plan was I was going to come back to the United States and go into investment banking. This was my actual plan, was to get a job at an investment bank. But instead of doing that, I saw another opportunity in the software industry because Ukraine has very talented programmers, world class. So I started a company in the United States that actually did outsourcing to Ukraine, where we would sell custom software development and then outsource to Ukraine. And as a result of that process, I took many trips over the years to Ukraine. My first trip to Ukraine was in the year 2002. And at that time, it was very different as a country. It's much more developed now. All sorts of improvements in terms of infrastructure, tremendous improvements. But the other thing that is with that is after I spent the time in Ukraine with the first company, I finally got back into some other businesses, and I focused on started to branch out in the United States doing a lot of real estate. I was very serious about real estate, bought a lot of residential and commercial properties all over the United States, primarily in Texas. Most of them were in Texas. But I finally reached a point where I always had a thing in my heart for Eastern Europe. I always loved the people. I enjoyed the experience. And I decided that I wanted to move to Ukraine. At that time, my plan was not actually to do a business. I just wanted to live over here. I had enough passive income coming in. And then I started to be approached by different people that had very interesting, very profitable deals. And at first I would say, I'm not sure about that, not right now, not for me. But after a while, I started to do deals in Ukraine where I would buy real estate in Ukraine. I would invest in businesses in Ukraine. And as a result of doing that, when I wanted to do larger and larger deals that were involving a lot more capital than what I had available personally with my thing, I saw an opportunity with the record low interest rates to be able to, Mike and I talked about it, we had all those conversations together. And we really saw an opportunity to be able to do something to help the country of Ukraine in terms of bringing in more foreign investment capital for worthy projects, and at the same time be able to offer high net worth individuals and also institutions the opportunity to invest and earn a great passive income through the purchase of bonds. So,
Now you lived in St. Petersburg?
That's right. I lived in St. Petersburg, Russia, and I really thought it was a fascinating city, a beautiful city, such history. I used to often visit the Hermitage Museum where they have a collection from Catherine the Great, all of this wonderful art that was available. My favorite artist actually is Ivazovsky. He's one of my favorite artists, and he painted a very beautiful painting called The Ninth Wave, Devyati Vol. Fantastic piece of work. But
that's great.
yeah, it's
So you got in touch with kind of the culture of the Eastern Europe, which would be Russia, Ukraine, Belarus. These kind of the Slavic culture. And so when you came to Ukraine, you chose, that ended up being your choice to move to become a resident of Ukraine. And that was in, what year was that?
That would have been 2017.
17, okay, all right.
I had done multiple trips where I would visit, business trips, where I had multiple business trips where I was traveling to Ukraine. But as far as actually moving to Ukraine full-time, that was 2017 when I finally decided that it was a good time.
Okay, great. And just a little bit about myself. I didn't get introduced to Ukraine until about 2006. I was a businessman in Montana, in Billings, Montana at the time. I was actually a contractor, and I had just run into, we had hired some young men who were working for us, strong young men, and one of them from Siberia. We had different parts of Eastern Europe. And my boys and I that ran the company, we really liked them. We had a good time, with them. They were funny, they were strong, They were like strong as oxes, we call it. And so we were able to do a lot of work. They had a good work ethic, we really appreciated them. And my introduction came when my back was severely, the spine was actually going bad on me. I was getting a herniated disc, actually, because as a contractor, constantly lifting, bending over, picking up things, and going through all of that. And I met a Ukrainian who was a doctor of natural medicine. And she actually spent time and working on my back, doing therapy and everything. And within about 3 months, my back was completely healed. I went years with this problem, and at the end of the seasons, I couldn't sleep for weeks because of the pain and the discomfort of it. After she took care of my back, I was completely healed, and I've never had an issue since. This is back in 2006. And I still did the same work. I still did the same things, and so that didn't change except for the healing. She was Ukrainian. She's actually from here, from Kiev, born and raised in Kiev. She was an officer during the time that I was in the military. I was a U.S. Marine back in 79 through 84, and through 83, and I think 83 to about 87 or 88, she was an officer in the Russian or USSR. She was a doctor there. But so if we would have, if the Cold War would have been a hot war, and let's say I got behind enemy lines and was injured, potentially she could have been my doctor. But anyway, we joked about that. It was funny. But to see how close the world became when the Iron Curtain went down and really opened up the world. So that was my introduction to Ukraine, was through her, and she introduced me to her friends. Because they had a community of Russian and Ukrainian, Polish and Belarusian friends, and So it was really nice, and they would always get together during the traditional holidays of Eastern Europe, and of course the American holidays. So we always got together, and they produced spreads of food. I mean, and it was just amazing to go to these parties and go to these special holiday seasons. So from that, I started, becoming fond of Ukraine. And then she handed me a book, and it was just a book. It was just a little paperback book that really talked about the history. It talked about the culture. It talked about the people. It talked about the food. And as I was reading through this, I got absorbed into the book, and all of a sudden I saw a parallel from Ukraine to my own personal life. All of the ups and downs that I've been through. I was bullied when I was young. That nobody would think of that now. I'm not exactly as skinny as I was back then, and small, but and so I was always having to struggle and fight for my own independence. Because people were just constantly oppressed. You get into business when you're young, and and you always get these people who are always just kind of oppressing you, and you fight your way out. And you've had enough, and you break free. And through the 1,100 years of Ukraine, the 1,000 years of Ukraine, it was the same thing where, Poland took over Ukraine fought back, Russia took over Ukraine fought back over these years, through all of this, through the hordes and on, the whole history. And so my heart became really endeared, not just because of the people I knew, but because I saw a country and a culture that was very similar to my own. And that's what endeared me to Ukraine. My first visit was in 2012. I came to Kiev, and then I visited Kharkiv and a few other places. And I didn't know the language. I still don't know the language. I'm learning a little bit, choo-choo. But really fell in love with Ukraine when I came here. The people are absolutely warm.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
They're very open, and they're very embracive. I mean, when you become their friend, they're your friends. And it was just such a wonderful feeling. And that was in 2012. And then 2014 happened when Russia came into Crimea and then into Donbass. That made me livid. That made me angry, because now I considered Ukraine as like my sister, like a family. And so when that happened, I was upset. I'm a U.S. Marine. We don't run away from situations, we actually run into them. And when I saw the videos of how the fighting was going on and the training, the lack of training that was going on at that time, my heart just broke. And so I came. I said, I volunteered. I said, look, do you need help? I'm a U.S. Marine. I can help. I can train. And they said, we needed you yesterday. So I actually came in 2015 and stayed and went down to Mykolaiv and worked with the Morske Piechota, the Ukrainian Marines, and did some training down there, and really embraced the fellows down there, the soldiers. They all became my sons, and just got really close with them and had a very successful training program that we set up. Well, that was kind of my mode. At that point, I had many thousands of friends that I had encountered and became close to me, and of course, Facebook was our connection. During that time, and so we were in groups together, 1 million people in support of Ukraine groups and Support Ukraine and all these different these groups that were on Facebook, which was great for me because it was my way to stay in touch while I was back in America doing business. But I always waited, I always looked for the opportunity and the time to come to Ukraine, and that time came in 2019. So and it was actually, my 3rd year anniversary here is going to be in March, the beginning of March. So it's coming up real soon here. And Ukraine is now my home. It just feel so relaxed, so comfortable here. Kiev is my city. I live here. I absolutely adore Kiev. But it's when the funny thing is that living here, when you see things that are going on, and the thing about commerce and economics and business is there's a need and someone looks to fulfill it. There's a question and someone has an answer. That's business. Someone has a need, someone produces something to fulfill that need. That's business, that's commerce. And I'm seeing it's like gold nuggets all over the streets of Kiev. And I'm looking at all these opportunities, and Ben and I had met at the gym, and through a mutual friend who introduced us, and we just started talking. We would go to our favorite place, the water. We call it a watering hole in America, and we'd have a couple of brews and sit down and talk. And I say, hey, I got this idea. I'm kind of bouncing this off there, and he says, oh, that sounds fantastic. He says, I have this idea I've been thinking about for a while too. And we just put our heads together, and then all of a sudden, quarantine hit, kind of locked us down for a bit. We didn't have much communication for about 3 months because everything was closed. We couldn't really meet. Even the parks were closed, if you remember, during that time. We couldn't even go out walking in the park. I mean, it was just really chaotic, what happened that first lockdown. And but after that, in May of 2020, the restaurants opened back up for terrace. If you had a restaurant with an open air, those opened up. So I went out on May 11th and found some nice places in Podol, and had my first meal after 3+ months or so of lockdown. And then invited Ben to get back together, and we did. And he says, that idea that we were talking about, and that's really in June. We started putting it to paper and started developing and started working on it. And that's how Andesite was born. And so, the real principle of andesite that we came up with is almost like the old terminology that we use in America about life insurance. Whole life insurance was the kind of the one thought process in the old style of insurance. Whole life insurance, and what it was is just basically you dump a bunch of money in there, but you can borrow against it. But obviously most of that money is spent, and then at the end of your life you have a little bit of a retirement. Well, really, whole life wasn't really a retirement, because you might end up with $30,000, which isn't going to last long at that time of the that you needed it. So they came out with another program. It's called term life insurance. And the phrase was, buy term and invest the difference. And so our principle is a little bit like that. Andesite Blue is, we sell bonds in UK and invest the difference in Ukraine. So the funds that are raised in UK, we bring over here in Ukraine, and we invest it into places like solar, green energy, solar and wind. Agriculture, port, and export. Export. Healthcare, which would include dental and healthcare. That's kind of really even our staple of our goal and our program, to really to bring some upgraded material and equipment that is needed here in healthcare services, to also make it in a way that's affordable for access to anybody who needs advanced healthcare and dental. Dental is one of our big projects. We'll go over that a little bit. Dr. Mark Hong is our chief medical officer in our company. He is going to be facilitating that and operating and being the managing director over all of the healthcare and medical centers that we are able to acquire. But so those are the investment sides. But why Ukraine?
Well, there were a lot of reasons for Ukraine, many of them. I saw an opportunity over here in terms of the fact that there's so much human talent, there's so much human capital that exists in Ukraine. You've got a country with a lot of educated people and hardworking people. There's all sorts of opportunities that exist that you really can't find in as many other places in the world. So that was a huge component. And
it's an emerging market.
Yeah, it's an emerging market, and really, with emerging markets, the thing that makes it so attractive is that they offer the higher rates of return that you can't find in more established markets, especially not at scale.
Correct. So, you have your first world countries that, your UK, you got, France, you got Germany, you got the United States, you got Japan, you got Australia. We can name a number of first world countries. They're not called emerging markets because they are the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but there's the growth in them is based on the GBP, right? So whether 5%, 6%, 7%. GBP on those countries. But in emerging markets, the GBP growth is actually substantially more because we're starting at a different level. And they are emerging into the commerce industry, and so that brings those opportunities. Investors come in more, it brings in more money, floods of money in there, and then it brings up businesses, and it brings the country to the same level.
That's right. And the other thing about it that is so interesting is because the rate of growth is faster here, a higher rate of growth, it allows for whatever capital is deployed, you're going to get back a better return than if you invested in something that's some other sort of instrument. Maybe if you buy bonds, you buy, for example, a U.S. bond or a U.K. government bond. It doesn't have anywhere near the return that an emerging market bond has, and that's what is really the blessing over here is we can do something good for the country in terms of bringing in investment capital on a large scale, and then invest into a lot of worthy projects where do something to improve the quality of healthcare, dental, agriculture, all these areas that we can do something to make the country even better.
Exactly, and it's I know that Ben and I have a passion for Ukraine. I mean, we live here. We absolutely adore and love Ukraine and being here, and so if Ben and I can affect 1%, 2% or more of whether it's economics or just the happiness index, where the happiness index is based on several factors, but the number one thing is opportunity and money. That when people have the opportunity, when there's job opportunities, when there's opportunities to actually do something with your life and improve your lifestyle, that increases the happiness index. The other one is
healthcare.
Healthcare. And so these are the things that we want to be able to have an influence on. And if we can change just a little bit of that, it's just satisfying to know that we can do that. And and of course, we're Andesite Blue is a for-profit company, but the neat thing about it is with the Western ideology is that we give first, and then the changes come, and the income and the opportunities come with it, and so we sow into Ukraine. And those opportunities will be there. So we give opportunities for many other people while our own opportunities also increase in it. So it becomes a win-win for everybody. Also, what about UK?
The UK, we have such a unique situation with the UK because there's a lot of investment capital that's available in the United Kingdom. For example,
Correct.
If you look at ISA accounts, in ISA accounts there's about $600 billion in ISA accounts, and a lot of that money is earning very low rates of return. Dead money, maybe 25% of that is earning low rates of return or is earning 0%. It's just sitting there available for investment. The problem that an institution or an investor in the United Kingdom has is if they've got money, it takes a lot of time to find a good investment. You have to do due diligence. You have to look at it.
Right? Yeah.
And a lot of them simply don't have time. Maybe they're busy professionals. Maybe they're managing a lot of money. They're in a situation where they would like to have a financial product that has professionals that have designed the product where they can place large amounts of capital and then know that that capital is going to go and do good work and that they're going to be able to earn the excellent returns that allow them to be successful as a fund manager or as a high net worth individual that just is looking for passive income.
Correct. Yeah.
And that's really an opportunity that is out there because there was an article in the Financial Times that talked about how hard it is to get access to emerging market bonds where, they're not well advertised. A lot of the people that are buying bonds, they're buying these low return instruments that might be a government bond, whereas with buying an Andesite Blue bond, you're able to get a higher rate of return. You're able to place any amount of capital that you want to. And then we've got in Ukraine something around $70 billion in projects that need funding. And this is something that
As there's no lack of opportunities and projects in Ukraine.
Correct.
And investing in is correct.
Yeah.
The other thing too, because now COVID changed everything for many countries around the world. I'd probably say all of them, but I'm sure there's a few that were less affected. But especially the United States, the United Kingdom, EU, those countries got heavily hit, and so the inflation rates are going through the roof. I mean, they're just super high inflation. So when he was talking about the ISA, we have IRAs in U.S. and we have ISAs here in UK. These are programs that are designed to give tax advantages or tax breaks on certain amount of income. And the problem is that those savings instruments that they're using are, like you said, 25% are paying less than 1% interest. Sometimes you can get into other funds like mutual funds and different things with your ISA, but those fluctuate. Those mutual funds they're not as stable as they used to be back in the 80s.
That's exactly right. I would not be in a mutual fund now. That's just me. I would be looking at bonds.
It would make me sick. I wouldn't sleep when I know that that year I made minus 5%.
Yeah.
Because now I just ate up what I made the year before, and now I got to make it up in the years after. Yeah. And so I tend to be a numbers guy, and numbers affect me in my brain. So if my numbers are going down, I'm not sleeping very good.
Exactly, and that's such a great point, Mike, because if you look at mutual funds, a lot of investors, they want to invest into a mutual fund. Compare that to index investing. 75% of the time, index investing, which is just blind investing, you're going to buy an index, they will end up having better rates of return. But if you're going to do that and you compare it to the rates of return that you can get on an emerging market bond, the emerging market bond works out better.
And the great thing about the bonds, and bonds in general, is that they're a fixed rate. When you purchase the bond, the interest rate that they are advertising is the interest rate you're going to get for the full term of the bond. And so that that's not going to change. The economy is not going to change it. The economy can crash, but the bond is still going to stay the same. Whereas in real estate is another. Diversifying in your portfolio is important. And so we can't just say, okay, go one direction. Okay,
exactly.
That's an unwise decision.
Right.
So we do have to have the versatility. But the opportunities have changed dramatically. The stock market is so volatile.
Mm-hmm.
It is up and down, whether it's the UK stock market, whether it's the US stock market, it was a Japan stock market. It is so volatile and it's so up and down. It's almost as volatile as cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
What went up is, where they say what goes up must come down.
Exactly. And that's what I see when people come to me and they ask about portfolio allocation to see, what would you recommend for a portfolio? The number one mistake that I see is they're over-invested in things like stocks, cryptocurrency, real estate. A proper portfolio should have approximately 50%, depending on your age, approximately 50% of it should be in bonds. The problem is today the bonds are paying such low rates of return. In a lot of cases, you may not even be getting a real rate of return. So that's why the emerging market bonds, the product that we offer, really solves that, where once a year they can go through, they can adjust. If some of their equities went up, they can buy more bonds. If it can be adjusted. But that's the thing. People, they do all sorts of crazy things where they go buy a bunch of cryptocurrency and they think it's going to go to the moon, and then they have an unpleasant surprise. There's a lot of.
They go to the moon for many, but the problem is that many is such a small percent, less than 1%, but it becomes the carrot, doesn't it?
It's like the tulip craze.
When I was young, you get emotionally involved with these things, and you end up making mistakes in your decisions because the carrot is so enticing, and the carrot is, he made $1 million, so can I.
Exactly.
But the thing is that he made it from this point, and you're starting from this point over here, and that opportunity isn't there. And so I jumped in, and it went down that way instead of going up where he got in. But I bought into the carrot because I was an undisciplined investor when I was young. And so all of those things. It takes actually education into the market, understanding finance, understanding the stock market, understanding real estate, whether it's residential, commercial, understanding all of these. It takes a lot of education for that. And so a lot of us we're educated in specific fields, but not necessarily in finance. I mean, doctors, for example, they're great. They are some of the smartest people in the world are doctors. They can operate on your brain. I mean, they can reconstruct your whole mouth and make it look absolutely beautiful and movie star rated. And these doctors are absolutely phenomenal and educated. I mean, their education process can be 12, 13, 14 years of education before they actually loosed out on their own. And but they're never educated in finance.
Yeah.
They don't understand finance. There's nothing wrong with that, because I need a doctor. I need a dentist, right? I need to be taken care of, right?
Yeah.
But other people are far more educated in the finance, and they're the gurus that really help us and direct us and kind of calm us down in that emotional process of making decisions when it comes to your money.
Right, exactly. And I think that the one thing that somebody that might be watching this, if they're watching and they're thinking about, well, what about my portfolio? What should I do with my portfolio? I would say look at it, and if you've got 50% of your portfolio in these other things like real estate, cryptocurrency, stocks of publicly traded companies, all of that sort of thing, that's fine. But if it's more than 50% that's concentrated, you've got to make sure that the bonds, you've got at least 50% in bonds. And if you don't have any emerging market bonds, I'll tell you, you've made a mistake in your portfolio, and it would be a good idea to reallocate it where you've got some emerging market bonds.
So that's absolutely correct on that. So this is an exciting opportunity for us. This show is going to be weekly now on every Tuesday at 6 p.m. I'll be having special guests on, a lot of Ukrainian business men and women who've been successful in starting their businesses and bringing them up to success and to a certain level. Some of them want to go even further. Some of them are very content. But we want to hear what made them succeed. What did they do? So little steps, the little disciplines that they did. Sometimes it's timing. Sometimes there's a little luck mixed in there. It's kind of like borscht. Okay, borscht is not just made with beets, but you got borscht. You got other ingredients in there. You've got some herbs. You got the bay leaf in there, floating around in there, stuff like that, and you got different ingredients to make the borscht perfect. Well, that's what we plan to do with with this show, Business and Finance in Ukraine, and just help to hope to bring some good nuggets for you to make decisions out there when you're making financial decisions and when you're having to do something with your money. Again, it's an emotional thing when it comes to your money, and it becomes really emotional when you make the wrong decisions. So hopefully, in this process, we can help steer and guide and bring some good content to you and some new vision and some new hope inside. One of the things that Ben and I were talking, we had a meeting earlier today, one of the things we were talking about is, well, Ben, how much money do we need to make to start investing? What if I only make $10,000 or $12,000 a year? Can I start investing?
That's the thing. I think a person can never start too young. If you just go with the simple 10%, just put 10%, start investing 10%. If you just form that one foundational habit, it has such an improvement over time, because as you get further along in life and you get more and more success, if you have that as your bedrock, your foundation. But just remember, put half of it into bonds, half of it into equity, real estate, this sort of thing. Because the one thing, these guys that I see that go into cryptocurrency, it works sometimes, but they don't like it when it goes the other way.
Down, yeah. And we know right now, we know that Bitcoin was at 69,000 last year.
Yeah.
And it's now 47 or 48,000 now. So those people that were up in the high and now they watch that go down, there's just a sinking feeling inside there. So anyway, many people have made a lot of money on cryptocurrency. I know that there's a lot of programs out there to help you get started in cryptocurrencies and other crypto, not just Bitcoin, but some other ones out there as well. So I'm not discounting that as an opportunity or investment, but it's really guarding yourself against the carrot and the emotion that draws you into something that can really burn you or cost you some money. So We really appreciate speaking with you tonight, Ben. I really appreciate our conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great, Mike. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, thank you, and have a good night.
Good night.
All right. Well,